John, age 40, plans to retire at age of 65 with $3,000 per month to spend in real terms. He hopes to enjoy such income for 20 years. Can he retire now? That's a typical question that we see in news articles, such as this. And I don't really like them because they are quite vague. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you numbers so that we can do a Q&A. And maybe let's put an anchoring number to things, which is $2 million enough to retire? I'll run through some simulations in this video. How much should be inside a house? How much should be inside in cash? How much should be invested? How much should be in CPF? I'll give you some simulations and hopefully one of the examples matches what your current situation is. And with that, let's roll in the intro video. Everybody's definition of $2 million to retire is very different. So let's go through the first example. I'll use John again for illustrating purposes. The first one is if John stays in a $1.5 million condo, has $300,000 in CPFRA and SA, has $100,000 in investments which are stocks, funds and bonds, additional $80,000 in insurance plans with value, and a remaining $20,000 in cash. In this situation, my first critique is there is an improper understanding of net worth. Net worth should be subtracting any loans that you have. So if John's property of $1.5 million that he's staying in has a remaining loan of $1 million, his actual net worth instead of $2 million will be only $1 million. And of this $1 million, $500,000 worth is stuck inside the house, the home that he's staying in. And that cannot be consumed, correct? In addition, this house that he's staying in is probably going to cost him quite a bit in terms of monthly expenses. There's not only the mortgage, which should be at least $3,500 based on this loan size. There's also conservancy charges of at least $200. So his living expenses are certainly not going to be too small. And in my guess, this is a situation whereby John is not ready for retirement yet. He's still in fact quite far away. The other thing to point out is John's cash is worryingly low. $20,000 may not be enough for emergency cash. Ideally, John should keep 6 months worth of expenses in cash, and $20,000 in my opinion looks a bit thin. So let's move on to the second situation where I'll tweak some numbers for you to see. Situation 2. Now let's assume John has actually fully paid off his house. His net worth now is indeed $2 million. His home is without any loan. But what do we see in this pie chart over here? You realize that a large majority is in the blue segment, which is the house, which does not produce any income for John's retirement unless he's renting out a room of it. So let's look at the remaining segments which may produce income. The first portion which I've tweaked is actually CPF. Instead of CPFRA and SA, now I assume John is past the age of 55. Now the CPFRA is created. And in this illustration, let's assume he has $300,000 inside his CPFRA to meet the enhanced retirement sum. Enhanced retirement sum, if you don't know, is actually 1.5 times of the full retirement sum. And as of 2021, enhanced retirement sum is $279,000. In 2022, enhanced retirement sum is $288,000. So we're kind of projecting in future. So what if John has about $300,000 in terms of his CPF retirement account? And as we know, CPF Life does not pay out until the age of 65. So this orange segment is not going to yield any cash flow for John. If he's before the age of 65, likelihood he's not ready for retirement. In my opinion, John can consider downgrading his house. It may be a bit uncomfortable, but it's natural solution out of what he's currently facing. If he were to downgrade his house, he'll be able to free up some cash that he can use to invest, or at least to beef up his cash holdings, because that is still clearly too low at $20,000. So let's see a situation. If he decides to downgrade his house, how will things look like? Now in this third situation, John has indeed downgraded his house, or that he actually bought a smaller home that is worth $800,000. Now let's run through the other things that are inside John's net worth. We assume now that he has actually more in CPF. Again, the $300,000 assumed in CPFRA for John, but now he actually has some monies inside his CPFRA and CPFSA. Assuming John did his CPFSA shielding correctly, that $100,000 should be residing inside his CPFSA, generating 4% rate of return. Then what do we see? His investments look slightly bigger right now, correct? At $200,000, and he's a bit more insurance plans with value at $100,000. From the surface of things, John looks to be investing well, until we realize that John actually has $500,000 in cash. That is the segment in red. And as we know now, cash generates next to nothing in terms of returns. So what can John actually do? And before I get there, invite you to smash on the like button if you have benefited from this discussion, and smash on the subscribe because we'll be launching more videos on retirement planning and investments. Now back to the question again, what can John do? I guess John firstly needs to understand how much cash he really needs to keep inside his bank accounts for daily living expenses as well as emergency needs. The rest can actually be funneled towards assets that generate income for him. So let's assume 50,000 is only needed to be inside his bank account. Follow me on this thinking over here. If you have $500,000 and you are consuming $2,000 each month, in a year's time you consume 24,000, correct? And you see this 500,000 slide by 24,000 downwards because you have consumed it. And the second year is 476,000. It's starting to look a bit scary, correct? Because you always don't see your bank account dropping. But on the other hand, if you only keep 50,000 for your needs and emergency cash usage, you realize that you have enough incoming inflows of passive income to tide away your expenses. And after 1 year, your 50,000 is still intact there. It did not drop. So there's a difference in terms of psychology. Something I wanted to share with you through this discussion. That if you have monies, whatever amount, and it starts to slide, it is scary. If you have what you have inside there and you have inflows and outflows that match, you're actually quite financially assured. And that will bring us to the fourth scenario, which is if John invests some of that cash. What do we see in this graph? Realize now that John has put in more into his CPF, correct? His CPF, OA and SA has increased to 200,000. He has pumped more to insurance plans with value. Maybe he bought an annuity plan that can provide monthly cash flow. And he's bulked up his investments into stocks, funds and bonds significantly. And let's put that number at 450,000 in a portfolio value. What does the equation now look like? Let's put some assumptions to it. The portfolio of 450,000 can generate 4% dividends. That would mean he's paid 18,000 a year. The CPF special account that he has of 200,000 can pay him 8,000 of interest per year. The insurance plans, if it's an annuity, can pay him $4,000 a year. And in total, if we add 18,000, 8,000 and 4,000, you realize that he can get 30,000 a year, which is equivalent to $2,500 per month worth of passive income. And if we add the fact that CPF Life will start to pay him after the age of 65, it will pay him 2,000 a month, which means after the age of 65, he has 2,500 plus 2,000, which is 4,500 to spend from 65 all the way to his last days. Then the question will be, maybe he doesn't need so much then. Can he consume now a bit more? Because now he can only consume 2,500, correct? So can we tweak the equation? Now let's assume he only needs $4,000 a month to cover all his expenses. And let's work backwards. If CPF Life pays 2,000 from age of 65 onwards, and CPF special account interest, and the insurance plan would pay 1,000, that means he only needs 1,000 per month in terms of passive income from his portfolio of investments. And that number that he should target is about 300,000 inside the portfolio. What we could suggest is for John to consume his investments. Right now it's 450,000. Let's consume that to 300,000 by the age of 65, because that is already enough to provide for him past 65. That means that from age of 55 to 65, this could be a targeted number. 18,000 in terms of dividends, which is what we previously forecasted. 15,000 per year in terms of consumption. And then 12,000, which is 1,000 per month from CPF special account and insurance payouts. That will give John a grand total of 45,000 per year to consume from the age of 55 to 65. Of course, this calculation has certain assumptions to it. When you start consuming, your dividends will also drop. I understand that. But that's to put a simplistic thing to the whole overview. Can you start to consume some of it because you're going to have CPF Life coming out after the age of 65? I think the answer is definitely yes. With that, I guess it's good to pause a while. There's a lot of numbers being thrown at you. Leave any questions you have in the comment sections below. I'd like to hear your point of view. I'd like to answer any questions you have when you run through these various simulations, because I have one last one prepared for you. And also before we get there, I want to crowdsource ideas on what we can cover for our next retirement topic, which is, can someone actually retire with 150,000 only? Now that number is really small. So let's think out of the box. That's why I'm crowdsourcing for ideas. Maybe migrate to Cambodia to retire, because 150,000 in Singapore, you can't last very long. Or you have to rent out one room, so you bring in 1,000. Then from there, if it matches your expenses, yes, you can live with 150,000. Let me know what are possible creative ideas to work around just retirement with $150,000. And with that, I'll thank you in advance and run to the last simulation that you should see. Thank you for staying till here, and if you haven't smashed the like button, inviting you to smash on it again. Now, let's touch on the last situation, which is really for someone who has 2 million investable assets. Just now situation was 800,000, which is a home. But home does not produce any income, or 1.5 million a home. So this last situation is if the person has an investment property. I think that is something that is quite ideal for many Singaporeans and something that we can all target. That's why I want to bring this up as the last simulation. So in this situation, we now input an investment property of $1 million with 500,000 as remaining loan. Now this is actually very doable. Or a person has already an investment property fully paid. Then what can be done is to draw out mortgage loan equity. That is something I covered before in this previous tutorial, how I've actually borrowed 150,000 for my private property. So in this situation, this 1 million investment property has now a remaining loan of 500,000, and then we've used that amount to get invested properly. As always, if you are looking to invest with leverage and borrowing, make sure it fits your risk appetite. But I also believe that if you understand good debt, you can take on certain level of leverage, especially if you know how to manage it well. Now in this situation, John's investment portfolio is $750,000. Now this investment property is able to pay John a net of $500 a month because there's conservancy still, there's still a mortgage loan. So John is still able to eke out $500 from this investment property. Then let's keep the rest constant, which is the CPF portion, which is the insurance portion, and which is the cash remaining portion. The only thing we'll bulk up right now is the investment portfolio, which consists of funds, equities, and bonds. And in this simulation, John actually has 750,000 invested into financial instruments. And that in turn, if we count 4% rate of dividends, that would be 30,000 a year. So in total now, John gets 500 net from his investment property, 1,000 from CPF and insurance plans, 2,500 from CPF Life, and last but not least, 2,500 from his investment portfolio. That will give John a grand total of 6,000 per month in terms of passive income. Fantastic, right? 6,000 inflow. If John is not too lavish, I think that should fit most situations in terms of retirement. I don't know what you think. Let me know in the comment sections. I'll be curious to hear from you after running through all these various simulations. So with that, thank you for staying here again. Invite you to check on these previous videos. Maybe it can give you a bit more inspiration on what you can do for your own retirement. With that, I'll sign off. Take care and goodbye.